Hey, so this is going to be a general introduction to the early access version of Unreal Engine 5. I actually thought about re-recording the Apple Picker game for Unreal Engine 5, this early access version, but the problem is that it is called early access for a reason, so things could change in between now and the first stable release of Unreal Engine 5, which is slated to be released in 2022. The UI could change and who knows what else could change, right? So instead I'm just going to introduce it. I'm going to take a look at the new user interface and some of the problems that you can run into when creating C++ projects, and I'll talk briefly about some of the features that we can expect for Unreal Engine 5, and then also how to disable some of the new features if you want to develop maybe on older hardware. Maybe some of those newer features are slowing your machine down, and just a few general tips and tricks to get you started. Now, of course, when the first stable release of Unreal Engine 5 comes out, I'll be archiving and re-recording the older Unreal Engine 4 tutorials. I already have improvements planned for that, including additional sections for the Apple Picker project. Until then, I'll be recording additional lessons for the C++ 102 module. At this point, I have the templates lesson completed for the most part. I still have, at time of recording, I still have 1 or 2 additional videos that I'd like to add to that lesson. And actually, once you finish the templates lesson, you should be comfortable switching over to Unreal Engine and start learning programming games in Unreal Engine, but there are some additional lessons that I want to add, such as characters and strings, so you have an understanding of a difference between character arrays and string objects. I have a lesson planned on smart pointers and various other things. A lesson on vectors is planned, and it's important to understand the difference between vectors and regular arrays. Now, Unreal actually has its own way of doing things with arrays, but the fundamental understanding of templates and arrays and vectors will make it easier for you to understand the Unreal Engine arrays. So again, I still have a lot of lessons that I can add to the C++ 102 module, and I'm also planning on going back and adding additional examples and lectures to previous lessons as well. So the point is that when Unreal Engine 5 comes out, I'll have all of that ready, and then I can focus exclusively on Unreal Engine 5 content, at least for a couple of months. Okay, so I'm not going to dive into C++ all that much in this video. This is just an update, some of the interface changes and what you can expect going forward from me. Alright, so let's get into it. I would like to mention one of the issues that I had when I got started with Unreal Engine 5, and that is when you go and select to create a new game. So I select Top-Down, for example, and I select C++ instead of Blueprints. So I select C++, I choose the target platform and the quality preset, and I give it some name, so in this case the C++ project, and I click create to create that C++ project. Then I get some sort of error. Error occurred while trying to generate project files, and you can see a Microsoft.NET Core app version 3.1 was not found. Okay, so in this section I'm going to explain to you how to fix this issue. Even if you create a project based on a blueprint and you want to convert that later, cancel here. I already have one created. So you can see all of these are blueprints. I do not have C++ in here. And let's say I want to go and add a C++ class now. I go to Tools, create a new C++ class, create some actor, next. Okay, just some dummy actor, and I'll create that class. And I'll view the output log. Okay, looking at the messages here in the output log, I can see that Microsoft.NET Core app version 3.1 was not found. It will show you the version that you have installed, for example, and so on. So basically we have to go and install this Microsoft.NET Core app version 3.1. Okay, so let's go and look at how we can do that. I'll bring up Visual Studio here, and I'll go to Tools, Tools and Features, and that will bring up the Visual Studio installer. Now, as I mentioned previously, all I have installed is the game development with C++. And basically, if I expand this here, we can see what this will install, the C++ core features and so forth. You will notice in the individual component section, I have this .NET Core 3.1 runtime installed. Okay, and once you have that installed, that error should go away. Just pay attention to the error messages. Okay, if you get those, and install the relevant individual component. So go to individual components, and then under .NET, I simply check this off, .NET Core 3.1 runtime, and then you can choose install while downloading or download all, then install. I prefer download all, then install, but that's up to you. So as you can see, I already have this installed, I already have that problem fixed. Now I would like to say that if that does not show up, you can always, in the Visual Studio installer, you have Visual Studio Community. This is what I have installed right now. So what you can do is you can click on Modify, and after about half an hour this will show up, and then again you can see what you have installed, and then again you can go to individual components, install what you need based on the error. Just pay attention to the error message, install that, and then go back to Unreal Engine, try and create your C++ project again. And again, that is Tools, Get Tools and Features. I did mention how to get to this in previous lectures, but I just wanted to show you how to fix this issue if you run into it. A quick introduction to the Unreal Engine 5 interface. Now I mentioned you have to go to Tools and then New C++ class if you want to create a new C++ class. Previously in Unreal Engine 4 this was done under File. Now again this might change. It is still early access, so they may change that. You will see some of the buttons display an arrow in the corner. That means if you left click on it, you're going to get a menu. Okay, so you get a drop down menu, same with the Content button, the Blueprints button. Now you can create a new empty blueprint class, for example. That is where you would go and create that. Or you can go to the Level Blueprint from here. Alright. In the next section you have the modes. You have Selection mode, Foliage Editing mode, and so forth. Then you have the Play button to the right here. And I'd like to get to this button, so you can click on this. Buttons that have a vertical ellipse next to them will execute a command on click. So this Play button, for example, it has this vertical ellipse next to it, those vertical 3 dots. So if I click on this, it's going to play my game. I'll just press Escape. So pay attention to that subtle difference. The buttons with the arrow in the corner is going to give you a drop down when you left click on them, and the buttons with the vertical ellipse will execute a command such as play, or to the bottom right corner here we have compile. So I can left click on here for additional options, or I can click the button itself and that will recompile and rebuild the C++ code. Okay, in the play button, if I click the vertical ellipse instead of the play button itself, I can change the play mode or target, so selected viewport or new editor window, or a standalone game which is going to play the level in a new window that runs in its own process. And of course you can simulate from here as well. Okay, just wanted to highlight those differences, and you can see the content browser is hiding down here now. This is referred to as the content drawer. In the tooltip here it explains that this is a temporary content browser. It shows you the hotkey, control and spacebar to bring this up. And basically when you lose focus from this, it's going to dock again. So if I left click in the viewport here, that content drawer is basically going to slide back down again. Alright, control spacebar to bring up the content drawer. And maybe you can left click and drag something in. Where do we find the lights on all of those fundamental actors? Well, we go to create. And here we have lights on all of these fundamental actors. Now you can go in all of these menus and then, go and add your light in here if you want. Now another thing you can do is you can place the actors panel. It is Alt P for that. So left click on that and you can see it'll dock the place actors panel to the left here. It is very fast to find things in here. Just type it out and then you can drag and drop that thing into the world. Click the X again to cancel that. The search filter, you cancel that by clicking the X. Next, another new and very useful feature from the Unreal Engine 5 user interface. We can dock these tabs, so the Place Actor tab for example, or the World Outliner tab that is to the right, as well as the Details. You can dock these to the sides of the interface and then you can focus on what's going on in your 3D view. We can right click on here and then you can click Move to Sidebar. Move to Sidebar for the World Outliner and move to Sidebar for the Details panel. And now we can really stay focused on what's going on in our level. We can select something, quickly bring up the Details panel for example, make some change. So left click in the viewport again. You will see that the Details tab basically docks again. So it's going to dock to the side again. Same with the World Outliner, so I can bring that up quickly. And the same with the Place Actors. So let's say we want another cube or maybe a sphere or a light. Again, bring that in. And as soon as that tab loses focus, it's going to dock to the side again. This is very handy if you want to bring up a tab temporarily and then get back to working in your viewport without all of that clutter of all of the tabs all over the place. To undock a tab from the sidebar, you can right click on it and then click Restore Tab, and then it's going to dock it basically in a way that we are familiar with from Unreal Engine 4. I'll just restore the world outline as well, and we can of course go and dock things where we want them, like that. Alright, I'll just bring it back to the side here, and I can move that back to the sidebar again whenever I want to do that. Then another important thing is I talked about the content button right here. You click on that. This is not just for the content browser and to add additional content browsers, bring up additional content browsers, but it's also going to allow you quick access to content from outside sources such as the marketplace or the Quixel bridge. The project settings is also in this bar at the top here, so you can click this settings. This is like a cog, and so you click that, then you can get to your world settings, your project settings, and so on. Alright, project settings, click on that. That brings up the project settings. You can dock it where you want. You can also go to edit, and then you have your project settings right here, and this is where you can bring up your editor preferences. Left click on that to bring that up. Then you can change the theme you have it set to dark right now. You can change the viewport colors and so on. You can change the asset editor open location. Change that to from default to the main window, for example. Then if I close the project settings and maybe I bring it up again, project settings, it'll dock right here at the top. Instead of us getting that floating window where we have to dock that again. And same thing if I go to blueprints, open level blueprint, and that will open at the top here as well. Okay, that tab will dock at the top here as well. Again, I'm not going to go over all of the settings and the editor and the project settings. I went over most of those in the Unreal Engine 4 section, so I'm not going to go over all of those again. But for example, if I go to the project settings, you can go to the target hardware, and then you can change from mobile to desktop, and the quality settings you can change in here as well. That'll actually show you the pending settings. So if I change from scalable to maximum, you can see these settings are saved in default engine.ini, which is currently writable, and then you will see what gets modified. So bloom is enabled, that is modified, and so forth. Or if I change to desktop now, you will see almost all of those will get modified. Change back to mobile, and I'll change back to scalable. Before I close off the level blueprints, you can see the interface here has changed as well. You have the compile button, save, and so on. We have quite a few changes, and it's all about getting the interface out of your way. You can see there's a bit of a theme here. The goal is to get the interface out of your way. That is pretty much all I wanted to show you with regards to the interface. There are a few more things that I'd like to talk about. So if the editor is running a bit slowly for you, maybe you're running Unreal Engine 5 on all the hardware, what you can do is you can click on this drop down right here, and this will give you the viewport options. Okay, so you're not changing perspective to top view or anything like that. You have this option, there's a button here to the left. You can turn off real time, and that toggles real-time rendering in this viewport. Okay, so click that, and you can turn that off. Then, if I go to the project settings again, I'll just click on all settings, and then filter for global illumination. So search for global illumination, and then you have lumen here. You have a few options here. I'll just set that to none. And the same thing with reflections down here under reflections. You'll see we have the reflection method that is set to lumen as well. You can set that to none. And then you can also change the shadow map method here. Change that to shadow maps. Virtual shadow maps is going to take a bit of a performance hit, as you can see in the tooltip. May improve that for you. So again, if you are running low-end hardware, if you make some of these changes that I mentioned, that may speed things up for you a bit. Alright, so I'll close the project settings for now. I'm done with those. Same with the level blueprints. Also, you'll notice that we'll get a real-time off right here. So I turn that off, and that is going to show me, okay, real-time is off right here in this button. If you click on this, it's going to turn real-time back on again. So I'll just go back and turn that off. Okay, this project that I created was actually based on a C++ project, the third-person C++ template. And I'll just close the editor off and go to the project in Visual Studio. I have the character.h and the character.cpp files open already. If I go over to the character.h file, you will see a lot of this stuff is familiar. From the Unreal Engine 4 content, you will see we have these macros and view properties, visible anywhere, blueprint read only, and all of that. The category as well. Now, of course, we haven't covered all of the stuff in the Unreal Engine 4 content, so we haven't covered Spring Arm component and all of that. But of course, you can open these projects and learn from what's going on. I'll just switch over to the source file, and you will see the same stuff. So we have the pointer, and then we create a default sub object. and we pass in what we want to create, a uSpringArm component in this case. You will have to include the relevant header at the top. Alright, and you do setup attachment and you have root component. So the point of this demonstration is that a lot of the stuff that you'll see here is very similar to what we've done in the Unreal Engine 4 examples. I'd like to highlight one difference here though, is that this root component is now of a different type. It is now of a type TObjectPointer. You can see we have some template here, and then we pass in uScene component for that. Root component, which is defined in Aactor, was a pointer to a uScene component in Unreal Engine 4, but is now this TObjectPointer template in Unreal Engine 5. So the early access version of Unreal Engine 5 introduces this TObjectPointer, which is a template-based pointer system, and that is an optional replacement for raw object pointers in editables. For non-editables, the TObjectPointer is going to convert to a raw pointer. So in other words, it won't have an impact on the performance of a shipped product or game. The goal of the TObjectPointer is to improve your editor experience. So in other words, for editables or for development. That is just one interesting change that I wanted to mention. Now for the most part, the code that we wrote in Unreal Engine 4 also applies to Unreal Engine 5. I just wanted to mention this because it may have an effect on your code if you use containers and depending on how you interact with the root component. Okay, so I'll link you to the migration guide so you can read up on that. But that is going to be it for this quick introduction to Unreal Engine 5. Again, I would not recommend that you start your next project in this early access version of Unreal Engine 5. Things could change. Use it to experiment or maybe check out the new Lumen features and Nanite features. If you're interested in that, of course this course is focused on C++, so I'm not going to go into that stuff, at least not at this point. And finally, as I mentioned, when the first stable release of Unreal Engine 5 ships, sometime in 2022, according to the current roadmap, I will put the Unreal Engine 4 content in an archived section, and I will rework those sections in Unreal Engine 5. I have a bunch of improvements planned to the curriculum, and I also have additional projects planned, so stay tuned for that.